What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of No Huddle Necessary. I am your host, Dominic Choroski, and we have a great panel lined up for you guys. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Like I said, super excited. There's a ton to talk about. Obviously, the trade deadline passed. Got some moves that happened there that we're going to discuss. But we got a great panel lined up for you guys. So let's go ahead, bring the panel in here because we've got some really good guests here today. One familiar face, Mr. Bill Carroll, is in the building. How you doing today, sir?
Well, a lot has happened, some of which we won't even be discussing on today's show, but wow, has this been a busy days in sports, news, and stuff.
Yeah, we might, at halftime, maybe when we come back, we'll touch on some stuff briefly. It's been a wild week in the NFL, okay? It's been a wild week. Let's go ahead and bring in Mr. John Meyer, making his first.
And baseball and hockey have had some stuff going on too, but
absolutely. Mr. John Meyer making his first appearance this season. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Dom. I'm a little tired, but we're here. We're ready to talk some football.
Oh my God, it's like I said, there's a lot to talk about today. There's a lot going on.
John's so excited about today's show, he put a dimple in his chin.
that one's been there for a while.
All righty. And making his second appearance, Mr. Joey Quiroga. Joey, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. And when I got the topics every day, yesterday and today, it's just been like, what? Yep. So can't break into what we already have on the slate, but I'm sure we're gonna dip into a few other ones as well.
So that's the thing, because you all know I typically try and get the topics out by Monday night. But then we have a week like this where Tuesday and Wednesday things just pop off, and it's just like, well, okay, now the whole show is kind of thrown because we have to talk about that, but that's not what I had scheduled. But
frankly, it's inconsiderate of them. They should think about what we're trying to do here.
Exactly. I'm trying to run a show here. I need you all to have your topics and all of your, your crazy things going on. I needed them all in by Monday. Okay. Monday is when I need all this stuff in. All right. And also another nuts and bolts sports writer, Mr. Stephen Garner, is going to be making his debut on No Huddle Necessary. Stephen, how are you doing today?
Yes, the people's champion.
How you doing today, Stephen?
I'm great.
Good, man.
It's hump day, but we out here ready to talk sports, ready to talk football. So what better way to spend than pass that time than doing this?
Absolutely, man. Well, like I said, super excited to have all of you on. I think we're going to have a really good show today. Like I said, a ton of good things to talk about. So let's just go ahead and get into the first quarter. Alrighty, gentlemen. So first up today, I want to talk about a little bit about the trade deadline. Obviously, the Rams made the biggest splash move once again. And I have to ask, obviously they acquire Von Miller. They give up two day 2 picks, a second and a third round pick. The Rams now next year, I believe, only have a 5th and 7th round pick that they actually own. That they
have some compensatory picks coming as well.
Right. So the Rams seem to be all in on this philosophy of, hey, listen, draft picks mean nothing. We don't care about them. Get them out of here. We don't need them. We want known commodities. A la, we signed Aaron Donald to this huge contract. We went in. We made the huge trade for Jalen Ramsey. We made the huge trade for Matthew Stafford. We made the huge trade for Von Miller. Is this a sustainable route for success in the NFL? Just basically saying, hey, we don't need draft picks. And also, does this move sway your mind about the Rams as far as being Super Bowl contenders? Stephen, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the decisions that they've made over the past few years, especially this past season, they are very much on brand for what LA teams do. They don't think about draft picks. They don't think about the future. It's always about the now. If you're not doing it in the now, it really doesn't even matter because that's all you can control is the now. So that's the correct mindset, in my opinion, based on the market that they're in. And honestly, the state of their team, I feel like if you're full-fledged 10 toes down in win now mode, you don't necessarily value or even think about draft picks in the same way that a team that's kind of on the rope of as to if they're contending or not, or if they're going to be a playoff team or not, they're not going to value it the same way that those teams do. So I feel like having Aaron Donald, having Jalen Ramsey, having Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, all these weapons on offense and defense in the division that they're in, on top of that, I feel like the move that they made adding Von Miller at the deadline was not only great, but it was necessary because for them to contend with those likes, especially with the Cardinals being so good this season, I feel like this is what they needed to do to fortify their pass rush and their defense more. So I feel like it was the right thing to do. And whether it's sustainable or not, usually this would be a yes or no question, but it doesn't matter because it's LA and this is what you do when you're in LA. So I feel like what they did was apt.
So Stephen says that being that they're in LA, it makes sense that they're doing this. And granted, LA is capitalizing on their window. They feel like, hey, we finally got the quarterback that we feel can win us a Super Bowl now. Obviously, Jared Goff is gone. They made the huge trade for Matthew Stafford. Bill, we're going to go to you now. Is this a sustainable route of success for the Rams, basically just saying, hey, we don't need draft picks at all? And does this move of getting Von Miller, in your eyes, put them over the top as far as being a Super Bowl contender?
I'll answer in reverse order. I already had them. I never had them lower than 3 at any point. I thought they were a top 3 team long before this happened. And this simply sort of cements where they are. I think they've always been one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. And I think they're continuing to be one of the top 3 teams in the NFL. And to your first question, it wasn't intended to be sustainable. They're trying to get a couple of Super Bowls, and then we'll figure out what happens after that. That's what they're doing. They're not thinking about, in 3 years. No, we don't care. If we've got 2 Super Bowls, we don't care what happens in 2025 or 2026. So despite the perception, only 4 members of the active roster of the team came via trade, right? Obviously, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey, very famously, right? And now they've added, 5 actually. Sony Michel, Austin Corbett, and now Von Miller. But most of the team, and they have some free agents as well, signings, but most of the team was still assembled via draft. And despite the mug that Les Snead displayed on his Instagram feed with a F them picks mug, his kids got him. He actually does value draft picks, but he values winning Super Bowls more than draft picks. It's that simple. And since I guess I'm probably the historian or the oldest or both, this is not, he mentioned LA. It's not just new to LA, but or not just something that happens in LA, but the Rams themselves have built teams this way before that have been close, not all the way to the championship, but close. For those who don't remember and can't remember, when George Allen was running the team and he was coach and maybe not quite general manager, but de facto general manager, they got rid of picks like nobody's business. And he brought in veteran players hand over fist and got close. And then when he left there, he then went with Jack Kent Cooke, who he got to know while he was with the Rams. When Jack Kent Cooke purchased the team that's now known as the Washington Football Team, Allen came in and they actually made it to a Super Bowl where they got crushed by the Dolphins that, of course, had gone undefeated. But that was the quote-unquote over-the-hill gang, which was almost completely composed of guys that had come via trade, signed off free agency, etc. So it's not meant to be sustainable. They don't care about sustainable. They're not trying to build a green team with no emissions. They're trying to win Super Bowls.
And I do get that. I feel like a lot of people kind of feel that way, is that they very much have this all-in approach that, again, they recognize, hey, our window is now. Let's go and maximize that window. John, how do you feel about this kind of laissez-faire, just throw picks away? We're bringing in guys. We're trying to win right now.
I think
also, go ahead.
I think that's kind of the new NFL. You've seen the Bucs kind of go in with that all-in approach last year. Not so much with the draft picks, but bringing in the free agents. Kansas City had a small window the year before that where they were they just put all their chips in on the defense to get that right. So, NFL franchises are kind of realizing that building like they used to isn't the way to get championships right now. And the Rams have me very confused because they pass the eye test. They look like a top 3 team, like Bill and Stephen have said, and they are. But when it comes time for the playoffs, I don't really trust this roster. They don't have a top 10 defense right at the moment. They don't have it's a middle of the pack running game. It's not a real good or great running game. And what has Matthew Stafford proven in the playoffs? Not much, really nothing. Not that that's really his fault because he played on terrible Lions teams, but he just hasn't proven it in January or February. So when the playoffs hit, when Aaron Rodgers is out there, when Tom Brady's out there on the other sideline, when Dak Prescott's out there, what are the Rams going to do? Are they going to have enough to get to Los Angeles come middle of February? So I'm not sold. It's not viable. It's just we'll see. It's going to be a crazy playoff season this year.
So John says he's not sold on the Rams. Maybe, and again, this is just me. I've spoken about the Rams a lot. I'm a firm believer in Matthew Stafford. I think that Matthew Stafford's quite underrated. And I'm really excited to see what he does now with a team around him that's actually built for success, as opposed to what he had to deal with in Detroit for the past decade, basically. Joey, how do we feel about the Rams and this approach to just going all in, not caring about picks? And does Von Miller put them over the top as far as Super Bowl contenders?
I think it's a good move. Anytime you can add a veteran of his caliber to your team, there's no way there's going to be really a downside to that. But of course, giving up some picks. But no, I like John's point about it's a kind of a different NFL. Like there's a lot of years, especially probably defensively, where it's a swing and a miss in the draft. So if you can get something that you and the brass and the GMs perceive more valuable right now than 2022, 23, 24, where, you might be picking in the 20s and the 30s every year. You know what I mean? You got, Patriots hit home runs every year doing that, picking in the way late rounds. But, that's a science that not everybody has in their system. So basically, I think the team to beat is the Cardinals anyway. The Cardinals mopped them up in week 4, 27-20. Stafford looks really good. Him and Cooper Kupp obviously are talking in the locker room and doing some after practice work because that connection is good and it's putting a lot of points on the board. But I don't think they didn't play well against the Cardinals, and they're going to play again in week 13. But Von Miller also long in the tooth. But let's see if maybe a change of scenery can get him going. And I'm sure he looks at, Aaron Donald on the defensive line and he likes what he's seeing. But he's been part of a really good defenses in Denver. So, I think just maybe a change of scenery is going to be good for him. But other than that, man, I think the Rams are in second place in that division anyway. They're a good team. But, I already heard, Bill say they're top 3. I wouldn't super argue against that in the league. But I think if they don't beat the Cardinals twice, we're not even talking about division championship.
So they do play. That's another thing. They do play in a very tough division. Obviously, the Seahawks have their things going on with Geno Smith, but Russell Wilson seems like he's going to be actually playing with real football players as opposed to his imaginary friends in the 2-minute drills that he's doing before the game start. I do think it's interesting. Like I said, the addition of Von Miller, again, that's just the most Russell Wilson thing ever. Like seeing that, it's like, yeah, this guy, it makes sense that he would do it. But
Russell's the guy
everything was good until the noises. The noises
volleyball game dives into the potato salad trying to make a save.
Absolutely. I mean, he's all in. Like it's absolutely Russell. And also, they were expecting him. He might be gone for like 5-6 weeks. He's probably going to be back like next week. I mean, he's already got the pin out of his finger. He's like, hey, listen, man. Like he wasn't even supposed to be like bending his finger at like a 10-degree angle. He was bending it like 70 degrees like the very next day after his surgery. Russell Wilson is a freak of nature. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think so highly of him. But Russell Wilson, stop doing the weird stuff before the game.
Nope. He's not going to stop. He's going to do it harder.
Jordan Love versus Geno Smith next week.
We'll see. But I think that's a good place to stop there. Like I said, I had the Rams in the Super Bowl before the season starts. I think this move for Von Miller, as much as he might have hurt him to leave Denver, I think this again just bolsters this defense. I'm a believer in Matthew Stafford. I like where this Rams team is going. And
addressing the whole thing about 32-year-old Von Miller being ancient, he's only going to be a part-time player. He's going to be a DPR, designated pass rusher. Watch how young he looks when he's playing fewer snaps.
Exactly.
And that was going to be another point that I wanted to add real quick. So, of course, you can say he's long in the tooth. He definitely is. He's the walking definition of that phrase. But I think, as Dominic said, that change of scenery is going to help. But I think even more than a change of scenery, just a change in personnel.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be relied upon to do the things that helped Denver have a top 5 defense the first 3 weeks. He's not going to have that same role in LA. So that's going to make him look like a much different player, which is the type of role he should be in at this juncture of his career.
He also has a Matthew Stafford-led offense as opposed to a Teddy Bridgewater-led offense, which means that he's going to be protecting leads as opposed to trying to keep his team in the game moving forward. So that'll be good for him. But that's enough for the first quarter. Like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that we need to get into. I really like this next question. I want to see how you guys felt about it. But let's go ahead and get into the second quarter. Alrighty, so it is safe to say that week 8, like I said, we're at the midpoint of the season now, but it's safe to say that week 8 was the week of the backup quarterback. Trevor Siemian, Cooper Rush, Geno Smith, Mike White, all got wins, impressive wins. I want to ask you all, and I feel like there's an obvious answer here, but I just want to see if you guys are going to maybe take things in a different direction than I was thinking. I want to know who impressed you all the most of these backup quarterbacks. Who had the most impressive performance? I guess we'll start with Joey this time.
Yes. Woo! Yo, there's only one name. There's only one guy to talk about, and that is baby-faced Mikey White, dude. Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. What? Who is this guy? I had to super Google this guy. I know that he got drafted by Dallas, but I didn't even know he was on the Jets roster. So here I am watching Red Zone, and they're like, Mike White throwing for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. I'm like, what is going on? So I looked at everybody else. Simeon, he went in, half the game there. He had the lead. Tough Bucks team for sure. Cooper Rush, I missed that game. I'm sorry. I know they got the dub, but I didn't get to see how he played. And then Geno was all right enough to get by. But, dude, Mike White is the story here. And, if people are thinking Zach White's job is secure, no, sir. He's getting the start tomorrow. And, he's probably going to come down to earth, let's be honest. But he was just playing football the other day in that first start. But I think Mike White is the story here. If he does show up tomorrow and get another dub for the Jets, that'll make them 3-5 in a year that, they were going to be down and out at the bottom of the league with the Jaguars. Watch out. It's Mike White time, baby.
Magic Mike, aka White Lightning, whatever you want to call him. Magic Mike, like I said, whatever you want to call the young man. Mike White looked phenomenal. He looked phenomenal also against a very good Bengals defense that, Mike White played so well, we're questioning the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Like, we're looking at the Bengals like, okay, were you guys flukes? Like, you had an impressive win against Baltimore, and then you come and lay an egg against a backup quarterback that also plays for the New York Jets. What's going on here? That's how good Mike White was. I like that pick, Joey. We're going to go to Stephen here. Stephen, who impressed you the most?
Well, Joey just did a great job selling Mike White. That's a tough act to follow. But I personally picked Trevor Siemian just because the stakes of the game that he came into, going against the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl, the defending Super Bowl champions, Tom Brady, coming in and leading 5 scoring drives. I think 2 resulted in touchdowns and 3 in field goals against that vaunted Tampa Bay defense. Unexpectedly getting into the game and not only just maintaining, because typically when a backup quarterback gets in, his objective is to maintain. He didn't just maintain; he increased. He added to. He applied pressure to everybody's GOAT, Tom Brady. He applied pressure to the point where Brady threw a pick, trying to get back into the game at the end, and that hardly ever happens, as we all know. So I think the fact that Siemian came in and did what he did, leading 5 scoring drives, and giving his team more than enough opportunities to put the final stamp on the game, which their defense finally did in the end, has to be commended, and that's what stood out most to me. Because the stakes were so high, he wasn't expected to get in, and then the opponent, and even more than opponent, the quarterback matchup counterpart that he had to go up against. I think that was all impressive.
So I do think that is one that I think some people might let fly under the radar. What Trevor Siemian did, I mean, all the emotion behind one, Jameis Winston playing against his former team for the first time, and then him getting injured, right? Like all of that, and now like that kind of falls on you, and then it's like, oh, by the way, you're playing the GOAT, right? Like Tom Brady's on the other side. It's what Trevor Siemian, he didn't light it up, but for him to come in there and hold the fort down against, again, the GOAT in that situation, very emotional, was pretty spectacular. I do give kudos to Trevor Siemian there. Bill, who impressed you the most this past weekend?
So I think we're sort of confusing most surprising with most impressive. Trevor Siemian was the most surprising because I scouted every single one of these quarterbacks in college. I didn't have to Google them. I have scouting notes on each one of them. And in fact, there's a connection sort of. Brandon Doughty and Cooper Rush got locked in what I still think is the greatest combined passing attack I've seen in a bowl game in the 2014 Bahamas Bowl. And Cooper Rush went nuts and Brandon Doughty went nuts. Of course, that's Western Carolina versus Central Michigan. And the guy who was on the bench but not in that game because he had, in those days, you had to sit out when you transferred, was Mike White, who I first started scouting when he was at South Florida. And then when Willie Taggart came in, they went to an attack where the quarterback had to run. And for those who are familiar with how Mike White tested, I mean, here's another connection to Brady. He ran a 5.2 240 and a 27.5-inch vertical. I'm 54 years old, and I can still go over 27.5 inches on the vertical. So that gives you an idea of what kind of athlete Mike White was when he was in college. He wasn't a great athlete, but he was a terrific quarterback. So when Brandon Doughty moved on after that season, 2014 season, he had back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons. I remember him quite well as a player. And things I noticed about him: accurate on all levels of the field, really good touch, really good anticipation, could read defenses. I wasn't surprised because I knew what Mike White was, unlike so many other people in the world, apparently. I was more surprised with Simeon. I had scouted him and even saw him play in person. I live not that far from Northwestern. My sister went to Northwestern. I was not impressed by Trevor Simeon when I scouted him. I thought he would hang around the league for a while, but I didn't think he would be anything special. So he was the most surprising, but by far the most impressive was Mike White. We had talked recently, and I want to apologize to Eddie, about the paucity of offensive talent that surrounded Zach Wilson in trying to defend Zach Wilson. And then we saw Mike White elevate that rather slender amount of talent around him to look like that against one of the better defenses in the league. Now, I do believe that there was that surprise factor because I don't think the Bengals understood what they were going to face in Mike White. But Mike White's a very smart quarterback, not a great athlete, though he looked a little more athletic than he did in college in that game, but extremely smart, has a very good arm, really clean mechanics. Like he's almost like teaching take mechanically, even more so than Cooper Rush, who I also liked in coming out of college, but his mechanics are as good as Mike White. Mike White's clean mechanically. He's, a guy 6'4" and 5'8". He's 224 pounds. Once again, other than not being a great runner, right? He's not a guy who moves around that well, but he's got everything else you look for in a starting quarterback. I don't think, frankly, just due to the money and everything tied into Zach Wilson, that Zach Wilson's really in trouble. But when Mike White becomes available, there'll be some teams interested. But yeah, he was by far the most impressive.
More love for Magic Mike. I understand. Like I said, what he did was super impressive. Next up, let's see who we got up here. Oh, yes, John.
Yeah, thanks for letting me follow Bill on that and the scouting report.
What's your scouting take, John?
Out there. It's kind of Geno had a very manageable game with going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, so I wasn't overly surprised with what he did. Cooper Rush really lucked out that the Vikings and just gave that game away, it seemed like, and I don't know what's going on there in Minnesota. Mike White, gosh, that I had to super Google, or not really super Google, just really Google him. I remembered him at Western Kentucky and throwing up a whole lot of yards, but just one of those names that after college that I'd kind of just given up on and it didn't click until I was looking at the stat line after the game, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy, especially with what Cincinnati had just done to Baltimore the week before. The Jets, they've beaten Cincinnati, who would have been the 1 seed after week 7 in the AFC, and then they earlier in the season they beat Tennessee, who would be the 1 seed if the season ended in the AFC right now. So they're putting up some W's where they count. I don't want to say there's a quarterback controversy. I know Monty's not a big fan of Zach Wilson there in New York, but you gotta raise your eyebrows at what Mike White just did, and if that gives you a chance to win here and now in New York, you got to try it. The Bills are really good in the AFC East, but Miami and the Patriots are beatable teams, and if you think you can compete against those two teams, throw Mr. White out there for a while. But really, the game that I watched the most of this weekend was that Bucs versus Saints game, and Trevor Siemian, he looked composed. He looked confident inside the pocket. I watched Trevor Siemian quite a bit in the AFC West when he was in Denver, and just so inconsistent from game to game. Never really concerned you, except when he was playing some really bad Chiefs defenses. He looked like a confident quarterback out there, and I think there might have to be a quarterback controversy for the remainder of the season in New Orleans between him and Taysom Hill going forward. I think Trevor Siemian was by far the most surprising for me this weekend.
Yeah, Trevor Siemian is a part of that list of quarterbacks that Denver was implementing ever since Peyton Manning retired. You got Trevor Siemian, you got Paxton Lynch, you got Brock Osweiler, guys like that. Not the best.
Someone pour them out for Kendall Hinton too.
Right, Kendall Hinton did take some snaps at quarterback.
More passes were
last year. No love for Cooper Rush. Maybe I have. You know what? Maybe I'm a little biased. Again, I hate the Cowboys, but Cooper Rush did throw a late game touchdown to Amari Cooper that I really needed for my fantasy team this week. So Cooper Rush is my pick this week. Okay, I'm gonna show some love for the guy. And also, his family was there. Big moment for him.
Yep.
Yeah. Prime time. Yeah, I think that's a really.
I liked him. I in that Bahamas Bowl, the kid was 28 of 45 for 493 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception. So I'm a fan of Cooper Rush, but he wasn't playing with the. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to dump on the Jets again, but I mean, look at the talent surrounding the two guys and tell me who had to carry.
Right.
The heavier burden.
Yeah.
Most, what was it? Second most behind only Cam Newton.
Yeah.
For most passing yards in their first career start. Like,
yep.
Mike White, phenomenal.
In the history of the NFL.
Maybe there is a quarterback controversy. Now, I will say, I think the game plan that they put in for Mike White was very, they took a step back and they kind of really set it up like, hey, we're going to make this super easy for you. We're not going to make this a complex, multiple reads type stuff. Like, I feel like they've been trying to do that with Zach this year. And I feel like the game plan that they had with Mike White might be what they need to do with Zach when Zach comes back. Simplify things and make it easier for Zach. Because I feel like at times they ask Zach to do too much because obviously we've seen the talent that he is, like the arm talent that he has. I think that
he understands less about reading defenses than Mike White. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Why would you have the guy who doesn't really understand reading defenses read defenses more?
Yeah, well, I don't know about the Jets going undefeated for the rest of the year.
Oh my.
Let's maybe Eddie sent that one in. I don't know. That was under the Nuts and Bolts Sports page. Eddie might have had the password tonight because I don't know about that one. But I think that's a good point to end off right there for that one. We've got a couple other good topics. Also, like I said, with so much going on in the NFL, we're gonna talk about some of the other stuff going on briefly when we come back from halftime here. But we're gonna give the guys a second, maybe go to the restroom, maybe get a water break, all that good stuff. We'll see you back in a second, okay?
The Team Nuts and Bolts Sports Store is officially open. Log on to www.teamnbsmerch.com and get your t-shirts, hoodies, polos, all sizes available. Once again, log on to teamnbsmerch.com. Get yours today.
Alrighty. So after our little halftime break there, guys got a nice little breather. I'm very excited for this next topic because I think it's an interesting one. And John, we're going to start with you because this one is close to home for you. For those of you who can't tell, John is a pretty big Kansas City fan, if you can't see that flag in the back there. So we're going to start with you, John. The Chiefs finally did get back in the win column. Granted, it was against the New York Giants, so take that with a grain of salt. But you look at the road ahead, and granted, that road got a little bit easier because Aaron Rodgers contracted COVID, possibly lying about vaccination status. Who knows? But fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers will not be playing the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming week. Yes. So that road got a little bit easier. But the Chiefs still have games against the Packers, the Cowboys, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Raiders twice. If the Chiefs miss the playoffs this year, should they consider maybe blowing this roster up?
Yeah, I think so. I'm really one of those, toxic Chiefs fans that Tyrann Mathieu was tweeting about last week. And the fact that this roster, I've never seen an NFL roster just go from Super Bowl contender. Less than a year ago, we were talking dynasty about this team, to very, very average. And the Chiefs are what their records show they are. They're a very average football team. I was talking earlier this week about how I liken this roster kind of to Mike Tyson before the Buster Douglas fight. Like, Mike Tyson was untouchable, and when he faced Buster Douglas in Tokyo and got beat like the Chiefs did in Super Bowl 55, everybody kind of figured out that what the weaknesses were, and they were never and Mike was never the same, and the Chiefs have not looked the same here in 2021. I've been, over the last few weeks, looking at this. This is a team that really needs to, in this offseason, change a lot of things. We're gonna have some cap space this offseason, a little bit, to do something with, but we need to definitely cut Frank Clark and open up about $12 million. We need to definitely cut Anthony Hitchens and open up about another $8 million. I would be open to a trade consideration for Tyreek Hill at this moment, because that's another $18 million you can add to your cap there, and you'll be right around $70 million to do some things, because there's some big holes in this team. This team needs to get better at the wide receiver position, outside of Tyreek Hill. I know if you trade him, you have to add those pieces, but if Patrick Mahomes is the generational talent that you think he is, he's going to make the wide receiver pieces better that he is. Whatever's happening between the years for 15 needs to change a whole lot. The Chiefs need to add pass rushers. We need to add safeties. We need to add corners. We need to add a left tackle, because that Orlando Brown experiment is just not working. He's a turnstile over there on that left side. If you want to make him a high-paid right tackle, and if he wants to stay in Kansas City for that, go for it. But if your plan is to use the franchise tag on him this year, and hope that he gets better in the off season or in the next season, so be it. But that's not the answer at left tackle right now. And the Chiefs gave up a first round pick. I know it's 31, but it's still a first round pick that you could have brought something else in. I'm all for blowing this up, playoffs or not, this year.
Maybe Tyrann Mathieu wasn't wrong about you guys being a toxic environment. Now, I will say, this is funny to me, and that was kind of the real red flag. When players are complaining about the fans being toxic, something's going wrong. Like, as a player, whether or not the fan, like, that should not be in the forefront of your mind. And also, by the way, like, you're not in Philly. You want to talk about toxic fans? It's not like you don't play
fans. Pretty mild, actually.
You're talking about Kansas City. 25,000 fans to Nashville the week before.
Right.
That toxic fan base.
Like, it's not.
They're not even in the top 10, man.
Not even close. Not even close. Like I said, it's not Philly. Yeah. So let's pump the brakes there. But John thinks they need to blow it up, and I do agree. Now, I do want to kind of pose this question. Andy Reid, great coach. Again, I understand they don't fully trust, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a little banged up this year. How about run the ball a little bit more?
You look at that second touchdown drive on Monday night. We had 5 straight running plays, and it was our most effective drive of the night. And then he just abandoned the run game for 2 quarters after that.
Right. I said this going back to the Super Bowl. That's a completely different Super Bowl if they just come out they come out in 12 personnel and run the ball down the Buccaneers' throats. It's a different game.
Yeah. I don't know if the Chiefs were going to be able to run against that defense effectively for an entire game.
But it would have at least slowed down the pass rush.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get some business done in throwing the ball.
That's the main thing right now.
Probably still lose, but you don't get your quarterback slapped down as much.
Yeah, exactly. And then also with your defense being as terrible as it is right now, maybe try and play a little bit more ball control.
Try.
That's just a thought. Hey, who am I to question Andy Reid? Who am I to question Andy Reid?
Please
Joey.
do. Somebody needs to.
Joey, how about you?
Yeah.
If the Chiefs miss the playoffs this year, should they blow everything up?
Like, man, John hit it. He's the fan. He knows the very intimate details of the roster and whatnot. I kind of really don't. But I think just like how the mighty have fallen, I just can't see it. And I thought that they would kind of right the ship. I know we're about halfway. We're halfway in the season right now. And when they kind of started sluggish and they started taking some weird L's, not playing very well against the Giants, you're sitting there thinking like, when they're going to get it going, right? They're going to get it going. They're going to get going. They're not getting Kelsey the ball. I don't know if teams are shutting him down or something. Tyreek is not the same guy, the real threat. And then they have really become they haven't been able to run the ball once Hilaire got hurt. So they're looking rough, man. And I'll say this: I just looked it up just to double stamp it. I knew the rest of the schedule was really rough, but did you look all the way down? They don't play a team under 500 at this moment the rest of the year. That's 9 games and 4 at home. They got 4, I think it was 4 the rest of the year. And they got 9 teams that are all 500 or better at this moment right now. They might not even finish the year 500, and they're probably going to lose Eric Bieniemy at some point. You know what I mean? Like, I know he's been in the coaching carousel a little bit as trying to get hired on the team as a head coach. I think someone is going to take a shot with him. I think I've talked about this on not this show, on other shows, that it's a travesty he hasn't been hired yet. But eventually, soon they're going to lose him. If they start losing him, I know a lot of players trust in him. I don't know, man. It's not looking good, that's for sure. And sorry, John. You're probably going to go not even 500 the rest of the way, big dog.
Again, it is kind of a how the mighty have fallen. I really like that saying. But if they don't make the playoffs this year, I do feel like at the very least they need to blow up that defense. That offense, if you do need to give up some pieces, obviously, because that's where some of your most valuable pieces are to kind of balance out the roster. I do kind of like, part of me does feel like as long as Patrick Mahomes is here, this offense will be fine. But there's a lot of questions right now with this Kansas City roster. Steven, what are you thinking? Should the Kansas City Chiefs blow this team up if they don't make the playoffs this year?
Well, you really just echoed the sentiments that I was about to share with our broadcast for tonight. I feel like on the offensive side, they have more adjustments to make to the adjustments that the league has made to them. So they have more chess to play. So I feel like, and they also need to do a better job executing, because the drop passes, the undisciplined and really unexpected bad throws from Mahomes is really just like a culmination of a lack of discipline from them on that end, trying to do too much when they're not clicking. They're not operating in that space that they typically are in. So when they would include these new plays or these trick plays or take these risky chances that will end up going in their favor as they have in the past, now when they try it, it's not, because they're not operating in that same space, not even close to it. So I feel like on the offensive side of the ball, they need to just keep it, which is surprising for them, more vanilla. I know it's not typically on brand for what they do, but that's probably what they need to do at this current juncture, being a mediocre 500 team. On the defensive side of the ball, though, as you just said, John, I would expect for them to blow it up, regardless of the outcome of this season, because they just can't. They can't muster up any type of sustainable success on the defensive end. They're not getting any type of rush from the line. The linebacking core is not that good. The secondary is worse than that. And they just have nothing to worry about. It's literally every play is honey badger. Are you going to make a play or not? Because if you don't, this team is going to put up some type of points on the board. So I feel like at this point, the defense is what needs to be blown up, regardless of the outcome of the season. And on the offensive side of the ball, I would let things rock out for another season. But as far as the defense, they just gotta get rid of a majority of those players and just cycle in the a new core of guys on that end to hopefully flip their fortunes. It just feels so weird thinking about the Chiefs in this perspective from this manner. Like the Almighty, they've really fallen like to unexpected levels of mediocrity, and it's just a puzzling thing to see. It really is.
Yeah, I gave myself a little bit of a pat on the back for having the Rams, mentioning the Rams being my Super Bowl pick. The other half of that pick was the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's not looking too good right now. Like I said, the defense is so bad in Kansas City. I mean, offenses basically are just like literally offenses are just like, hey, wherever Daniel Sorensen is on the field, throw at him.
Yeah.
Because it's probably going to be completed because he has been terrible this year. Bill, what are your thoughts? Do the Kansas City Chiefs need to blow this team up if they don't make the playoffs this year?
Well, I mean, as was mentioned before, it doesn't matter if they make the playoffs or not. They have 33 free agents, 28 of them unrestricted free agents for 2022. Here's the list, kids. I'm just going to deal with the unrestricted free agents. Tyrann Mathieu, who is $14 million on the books. Jaron Reed, who is $6.5 million on the books. Melvin Ingram, who's $4 million on the books. Travaris Ward, who is $3.384 million on the books. Mike Remmers, who is $3.3 million on the books. Mike Hughes, who is almost $2.5 million, 2.46 something on the books. Daniel Sorensen, who I guess apparently people will be willing to pick him up and drive him to wherever he wants to go, is going to come off the books at $2.462 million. Byron Pringle is going to come off the books at $2 million, 1.33. Andrew Wiley, 2.133. Chad Henne, 1.625 million. Darrell Williams, 1.6 million. Ben Neiman, $1,570,000. Kyle Long, $1.5 million. Demarcus Robinson, 1.127. Blake Bell, also 1.127. Alex Okafor, $1,775,000. Daniel Brown, $1,040,000. Andrew Austin Blythe, a bargain at only $990,000. Also, Jerick McKinnon, $990,000. Josh Gordon at $990,000. Derek Motti at $936,400. James Winchester at $890,000. Orlando Brown Jr., who I know is not a fan favorite. And if you really watched him in college, and even when you watched him in the Ravens, you should have seen this coming. He's great in the run game. He's always struggled, particularly against quick rushers in the passing game. But because they run the ball so much in Baltimore, they were able to hide him to some extent. But he can't play left or right tackle. So good luck with that. At $872,930, Dorian O'Daniel at $836,565. Armani Watts, a bargain at any price, $773,050, and Will Parks at $140,000. And then Mitchell Schwartz is sort of a special situation. But those are your unrestricted free agents. You have to blow it up. You just have to not resign. I mean, it's really simple. You don't need to blow anything up. You just put your pen away as general manager and don't re-sign all those players. Now, probably a couple of them, if you can renegotiate a team favorable deal, you bring them back. But some of those guys aren't coming back, right? And so you don't have to do anything dramatic. Just put your pen away. This team needs to rebuild and restock. And as I mentioned, obviously, two things, particularly the defense, and yes, that offensive line. That offensive line has one or two solid young players, and then the rest of them either will naturally leave, as you mentioned, through free agency, and one of them or two of them might even end up retiring. We'll see what happens, obviously, with Dr. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. I think he's still a very good player, but you don't become a doctor to play football forever, right? I mean, he clearly has a very solid second career waiting for him soon. I think Remmers probably, they negotiate something probably to bring him back, but a lot of that offensive line is just naturally going to be gone in free agency, as I just mentioned. So you don't have to blow anything up. There's no need for a plunger and dynamite. Just put your pen away.
Well, it seems like we all do have this similar kind of thought process that at the end of the day, something with this roster, not something, many things with this roster need to change. I think
and they will. And they will. When you have that many unrestricted free agents, your roster's going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time. Go ahead and throw up your fours because it's time for the fourth quarter. Alrighty. So Derrick Henry was in the midst of another tremendous season, looking like he might be an MVP, was even throwing touchdowns this year instead of just running them in. And then obviously he suffers the broken bone in his foot, and that kind of derails the Titans' Super Bowl aspirations, or, aspirations of being a contender. However, they did go sign 36-year-old Adrian Peterson to the roster. Surprisingly, they didn't make any big moves to get a running back at the trade deadline. Is Adrian Peterson enough to keep this team afloat? Is this enough to keep them maybe in that context of being a contender in the AFC? Bill, we'll start with you.
Well, somebody earlier called 32-year-old Von Miller long in the tooth, who's going to be a part-time player. I can only imagine what terrible things you guys will have to say about Adrian Peterson. They will stay afloat, but not because of AD, right? Even though his initials are AP, his nickname is AD for all day. I've been watching this guy since I saw his tape in high school at Palestine High School. He is a sui generis. He's rare. Other than that one time when he blew his knee out, he's been one of the most incredibly durable power runners I've seen, and I've been watching football a very, very, very long time. But he's not going to – you don't replace what you get from Derrick Henry. That's not something that you can do. And so I was not surprised at all that they did something crazy, because there's really not something crazy to do. There's nobody out there you could have gotten via trade or free agency that was going to come close. That was going to be anything, any sort of that's not a replaceable thing. That's not a fungible part of your team, right? So Adrian Peterson makes a certain kind of sense, I guess you could say, in that you're getting another Hall of Famer, I guess, and they like collecting Hall of Famers on that team. But they're going to stay afloat because of the passing game. The passing game is better than they themselves realize it is, and than most people give it credit for being. They have an efficient, explosive passing game. And they got lazy, quite frankly, about using it because of, here's number 22, right? I mean, when you have something like that, it makes you lazy as a play caller. It makes you lazy as a play designer. It makes you lazy as an offensive coordinator. Now you have to really earn your money, right? Now you have to really come into the office a little earlier. Now you've got to really draw some stuff up. Guess what? They'll be fine. While we don't think of Tannehill as an elite quarterback, and I don't think I would use the term elite either, he's more than good enough. The team still has a lot of talent. And people are going to be reminded of how much talent when they see this team still managing to be very effective on offense without Derrick Henry. However, will they be able to put games on ice the same way? The answer is no. Will they be able to run into stacked boxes, 8, 9 man boxes, and just get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 yards no matter what, like they could before? No. You're going to have a slightly different offense. But if you're willing to embrace that, and I think they will, I see no reason why they can't still chug along as one of the better teams in the AFC.
All right, so Bill's still believing in the Titans, still believing in their chances. What do we got next here? Let's go, John. How do we feel about the Tennessee Titans? Is Adrian Peterson enough to keep them afloat, or does Derrick Henry being out basically kind of dash their hopes this season?
It keeps them afloat, but if the Titans had championship aspirations, I think those are gone. You're replacing Derrick Henry, who may be the best back that I've seen in my lifetime. He was on pace for his third straight 100-yard season, and if you go back and look in the history books, that's only been done by two other running backs, and that was Jim Brown and Eric Dickerson. So it was a pretty historic run that Derrick Henry was on from the 2019 season up to this point, and he just seemed to be getting better and better as he went on. Adrian Peterson, he should have fresh legs going forward, and I hope that he can give them that sense of a threat in the running game, because what makes that offense, that passing offense, so good is the threat for play action. And when you have two very talented physical receivers on the outside in AJ Brown and Julio Jones, you need to be able to throw the balls effectively. Thanks to that play action pass. Ryan Tannehill's the most surprising quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 seasons, in my opinion, just what he's been able to do ever since he's come over from Miami, and just be a really good leader on that team. I don't know if that passing game has enough to keep them viable in the AFC playoff picture. The problem isn't the offense, it's the defense, and it's the bottom third defense that is able to mask some of their deficiencies because of how well that offense can control the ball. So championship aspirations aside, they're going to stay afloat here in the AFC.
All right. That's a very good point about the defense being brought up there. I do think that's where the biggest issue is going to come for the Tennessee Titans, is that you were able to kind of, at the very least, even though this defense was pretty bad, you were able to keep them fresh, and you were able to keep them off the field as much as possible with the way Derrick Henry runs the ball. You won't be able to do that as much now. So I think that's going to be where they take the biggest hit. Joey, what are we looking at here for the Titans with the loss of Derrick Henry?
Man, what a crushing blow. You know what, though? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but fifth metatarsal, right? So that's it's very load bearing, obviously, but I think he's coming back. I think he's coming back this year. No, great points on the passing game. That was one of my hard hitting points too, is that, it's a very good balanced offense when you have King Henry and Tannehill and the wideouts playing well. And now they're going to have to solely rely on the passing game. But I do think it keeps them afloat. That division is hot garbage. So they're going to chew those guys up. They're probably going to be in the ballpark of 12-5, 13-4, maybe even possibly, better. And so they're going to be a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed. And so the problem is, if there's no Derrick Henry in the playoffs, that team is going to get devoured by a Buffalo Bills team. Yeah, I know they won on Monday. Was it Monday Night Football the other night? Maybe it was Thursday. I can't remember. But I know that happened, but it wasn't, terrible play calling, whatnot. And it'll be weeks that after that had happened. So, I think the Titans are okay, but Derrick Henry is the real MVP. He is the most valuable player on any of the 32 football teams. You take that dude away, and it is a massive, massive hit. But like I said, with their schedule, with the division, with a good, hot going passing game right now, defense is not looking great for sure. But I do think they do stay afloat. And I'm telling you right now, I think Derrick Henry makes it back for a couple games to warm up for the playoffs. No BS.
So I have been seeing some varying time frames that he might maybe be able to come back, in the playoffs if they make it and stuff like that. So he could be coming back. Something to keep our eye on there. But I do agree, Derrick Henry, like I said, for my money, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, I think, are, when it comes down to valuable as far as just what they bring to their team, those are the two guys that I think where it's just they probably are the most valuable to their team just because of how much their offenses are built around their skill sets. Stephen.
I would throw Quentin Nelson somewhere on that list. When Quentin Nelson is on the field for the Colts, their offense, no matter who's running the ball, becomes one of the better running offenses right up there with the Titans when they have Quentin Nelson on the field. When Quentin Nelson's not on the field, they're still a decent offense, but they're no longer a team that can have those 14-play drives that takes 5 minutes and 54 seconds.
Absolutely. Stephen, I know you got a hard out for us, so go ahead.
Yeah. Joey and Dom just pretty much said exactly what I was going to say in terms of the most valuable player room. I feel like there's Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, or Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. And then there's Quentin Nelson, of course. And after those three, it's just the field. In terms of specific MVPs that have the biggest impact and their offenses are just so centric around those specific players, you can't do more than those three do. You can't represent more for your team than those three do. All right, so to get to the question at hand, I feel like the Titans are gonna stay afloat, and it's not gonna be because of anything that they do. It's gonna be more so because of how putrid their division is. The fact that they have 2 1-win teams at the bottom, and then they have the puzzling, middling, mediocre, whatever you want to call the 3-win, the 3-win Indianapolis Colts as the biggest quote unquote competition to taking them out, and in their potential playoff hopes. So I think by default they'll get the playoff experience that they were expecting to have this season. The biggest variable is obviously if and when Derrick Henry returns. That remains to be seen, and that's also out of their control at this point. I do feel like Ryan Tannehill is a very underrated quarterback. He's certainly above average. To say that he is not good enough to lead them, that's not true. But I do feel like they have enough weapons on their team to help them stay afloat and get to that postseason and play their chances from there.
Alrighty, so everyone seems to believe that the Titans will be able to stay afloat. Maybe I am still a little jaded because I do want him to be successful. Does anyone believe the Colts can catch the Titans in this division? Maybe I'm jaded because I want Carson Wentz to be like, I want Carson Wentz to figure it out. So I'm kind of like still holding out hope that he will.
I believe Carson Wentz will figure it out. I don't think that will by itself be enough. You're asking a lot because one, he only plays on one side of the football. The last I checked, so you've got the situation where even if their offense will pick up and look better as the season goes on and on. Remember, he's missed a lot of practice time at the front part of the season, so he's changing teams and then not getting as much practice time with these new players. If he stays healthy, and that's always a big if with Carson Wentz, but if he stays healthy, I believe we will see him, especially in the last half of the season, look better and better as the season goes along. And the team should be also getting healthier around him. They have some guys coming back in the next few weeks that should help the team as a whole to get better. But that's a lot of catching up. I mean, I don't think they're going to get all the way. Could they get within hailing distance and make it interesting? Sure. But catching all the way up, that's a lot to ask.
I mean, that throw was atrocious Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean,
listen,
that throw on that throw Sunday versus the Titans was. I mean, I can't even believe he threw that ball. I can't believe, and it literally torpedoed the entire game for him. Like they could have kicked the field goal. They were marching. They were doing well. They were playing well. What was that? Come on, Carson.
Like it's such a roller coaster watching him because you see, and like I said, and by the way, and Steve even had to drop out. I know he had something to attend to, so he had to go ahead and get out of here. So thank you for joining us, Stephen. But like Carson Wentz, he does, and mind you, like he had like a 3-game stretch this year, these past 3 weeks, where he was playing well. right? Like was not necessarily looking like the MVP Carson, but he was playing well. He wasn't losing the Colts games.
Right.
Then he comes out and it's like he has these kind of bonehead I believe it was Marcus Spears who spoke about it, where he said Carson Wentz is playing how Jameis Winston played in Tampa Bay. Where it's like you see the top tier talent where it's like, okay, this guy can be like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And then he turns around and then the exact very same game, the very next drive, he makes like one of the most mind-numbing decisions where it's just like, what are you doing, Carson? It's so strange. It's so strange. With that being said, obviously that wraps up our 4 quarters, but I did say we were going to touch very quickly.
Yes, a 5th quarter.
Yes,
throw up those fives.
5th quarter overtime. Yeah, free football OT here. Obviously, we have the situation with Henry Ruggs. I feel like we all kind of have the exact same mindset there.
Yeah,
absolutely stupid. There's no excuse to be driving under the influence, especially in today's day and age, especially when you play in the NFL when teams literally have services for you. Like every team in the NFL has services for you where they will get someone to drive you home. Like there's multiple deterrents in situations like this. And it's sad that it came to this, sad for the young woman who lost her life, her family, just something that didn't happen. And even worse is that Henry Ruggs is someone who he himself, like he lost a best friend and a teammate to, a car accident before. So if anyone should know about this, then, and if there's anyone who should take this seriously, it's him. So once again, my main thing there is just thoughts and prayers to the families of the individuals who lost loved ones. Obviously that's something that we never want to see. But on a lighter note, what the hell's going on in Cleveland with Odell Beckham Jr.? Can someone wrap this up around me? Now, mind you, when your father is releasing 11-minute long videos of your quarterback missing a wide open wide receiver, I kind of get why he's upset. I guess we'll just go real quick clockwise here. Bill, we'll start with you. Can you explain to me what's going on in Cleveland right now?
Sure. Well, so every once in a while, somebody's father channels their inner LeVar Ball, right? And they decide, I'm about to make myself a superstar and destroy my son's life a little bit. Now, I am sure that they had discussions, but these were private discussions, right? I'm sure that OBJ had vented to his dad about his frustrations, but these were private frustrations that he vented to his father. But some people are saying that he put his father up to it. I don't think he had to put his father up to a bleeping thing. I think his father had been stewing over this for a while. You don't just have 11 minutes worth of stuff like that, right? It takes a while. This was premeditated, Your Honor. This was not a crime of passion. This had been coming for a while.
Yes.
And so finally, that last straw landed on that camel's back. And at that point, he hit send. So yes. I mean, it so fits perfectly with all the stuff that people like to say about wide receivers and blah, 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 and such. But this is like one generation removed. And of course, the father was a very good fine athlete himself. Both of his parents were great athletes. His parents were both track All-Americans, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. And so he knows what it's like to be a competitive athlete, but he doesn't know what it's like to be in an NFL locker room. And so I do believe that Odell, like I said, thought he was venting to his dad, right? Like most of us would vent to our dads about whatever is frustrating us at our jobs. The difference is that our dads, I'm hoping, are not going to put together 11 minutes of cuts and then blast those things out to the internet so that we can now, I mean, we obviously don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we kind of guess it's going to happen. He's about to get Keyshawn Johnson, most likely.
Absolutely. John, what are your thoughts about what's going on in Cleveland?
I have no clue what's going on there. I can only hope and pray that the Browns do something Brown-like and release him, and Kansas City finds a second receiver and can make a playoff push. But I feel that they are probably just going to sit on him like Houston's going to sit on Deshaun Watson and just not give any of these contenders another weapon out there. That's probably the right move if they don't plan on playing him. But Cleveland has a top 5 roster, and
so
they're doing what the Browns do.
So again, and like Kevin Stefanski basically came out and told the rest of the team, like, hey, move forward as if Odell Beckham is not a part of the team anymore.
Yes.
Why didn't you trade him then? Yeah. Like, granted, you want some compensation back, but like, if you're just gonna move on forward, like, you're not gonna let him practice, you're not gonna let him. Should have traded it. Obviously, you're kind of taking this standpoint where it's just like, we'd rather be without him than have him here at the moment. Like,
yep.
Joey, can you make sense of this for me?
No, but it's also the classic OBJ, man. Classic OBJ, blowing up a good thing, right? Like, the Browns had a really good year last year, and expectations were really, really high. And for whatever you want to call it this year, the Browns, they're 500, they're 4-4, but like, they're not out of anything right now. That division still, like, there's the Ravens on top, but like, they can, and the Bengals are playing obviously well, but like, they could split, they could chew, they could chew up on the Steelers too as well, and they could split now after having last week debacle. But I'm just saying, man, I don't think it's that bad. I really don't. And he did the same thing in New York, and he's the classic diva wide receiver, man. And now, Antonio Brown, you haven't really heard from him in a while after a bunch of change of sceneries. If that's what this dude wants, I mean, and then that's what he's going to get. But what's going to happen? Des Bryant went down to New Orleans, dapped everybody up in the locker room and said, "Hey, we're going to do big things, blah, blah, blah." Never saw the field, right? T.O. did this back in the day, but T.O., a lot different receiver than all of, those guys. Bigger, faster, not faster, but bigger, more physical. And I don't know, man. Ever since the New York days, OBJ hasn't been the same. He's hurt. He's always hurt. He's always injured. And the verdict is still out on Baker, but like, they had a good year last year, and they finally got a good coach. And if I were Stefanski and this dude was the one problem in my locker room, it's time to get rid of him any way you see fit. Yeah. And if that's just holding on to him, making his life miserable, and they're going to move on the field, then that's the decision they need to make. But the same thing happened in Pittsburgh, right? Antonio Brown was having problems with whatever he was having problems with. What's his name? Running back. He was having problems. In there. And that team was loaded. And they haven't been the same since either. So it's like, you got to do what you got to do with these Devo wide receivers nowadays. You know what I mean? If they want to, you don't want to give them off to, like what John said. You don't want to give them off to somebody, and he goes around blowing them up for 10 catches and 100 yards and 2 tutties. We'll take him here in Vegas, that's for sure. But like, I don't think that's a locker room that is taking that.
You have an opening for wide receiver, obviously.
Right. Yes. You guys have an opening for wide receiver.
I should take the smile off my face. There's a lot going on around here in this town. I'm not sure, John and Bill, you knew I lived here, but just doubling down on the Henry Ruggs thing, man. That was extremely tragic to wake up to hear that news in a locker room that's already down and out and very sullen. So, man, and then they're on the high trajectory on the way up. So I don't know. I'm actually really impressed with Derek Carr's leadership at this point in time. And so I don't think they're going to nosedive, but I think anyway, just OBJ and the Browns, man, if the Browns, the best bet is just to get rid of that dude, man. Seriously, they got a good thing going on right now. They don't need that distraction. I hate saying it. I don't like taking opportunities away from extremely gifted athletes, but they're doing it to themselves, man. Come on.
I do think a bit of this is inflicted, just Odell has done it himself because he kind of does have that reputation, right? Because his prior actions have gotten him that reputation. In Cleveland, though, I do think he has a legitimate gripe. Like, it does seem like Baker is like actively doing everything he can to not throw Odell the ball at times. And then there are times, obviously, with just Kevin Stefanski's offense, which is more ball control. It's not really one that opens up the field, which is obviously where Odell is best at. It's just not really a good fit for Odell. And I think both parties would be benefited from a split. But the point that you made about the Raiders, the fact that the Raiders are sitting at 5-2 right now might be the most impressive thing in the NFL. Like, how they've dealt with this much turmoil and still had so much success is incredible. Like you said, the Derek Carr and his leadership. I told you, I've mentioned on this show many times, my fever dream, and it might not happen now because John Gruden isn't running the show anymore. My fever dream is that the Raiders decide to move on from Derek Carr after this season, and he comes and signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not going to happen.
That would be awesome. That would be so stupid of them, but that would be awesome. That would be so.
But like I said, when John Gruden was the coach, it was a possibility because we all know John Gruden, his favorite quarterback is his next quarterback.
Right.
There was a chance. But
sure.
Now Bisaccia is running the show, and he actually seems like he knows what he's doing. And then, yeah, my dreams are crushed. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you to our guest. Obviously, Stephen had to leave early. Thank you for you. But now it's time to go ahead and announce a winner. So, one of the best parts about my job, and maybe it is a little because I'm a little, I don't necessarily think I take pleasure in seeing, some people's dreams crushed. But one of the fun things about this job is sending people to the back. I'm not going to lie to you. It is a very fun part of the job, sending people to the back. I don't get to do it as much because Stephen obviously left. So I don't get to enjoy it as much, but I do have to send a couple of you to the back. First up today, we are going to be sending to the back again. You all phenomenal, great show. Actually, this was the closest show I've had this entire season. Like, you all, a lot of people tied, but one of you did stand out. However, Mr. Bill Carroll, we are going to be sending you to the back first today. Thank you.
Too much good information. I get it.
We always appreciate you so much. Thank you. But we are going to be sending Mr. Bill Carroll to the back. And now we have Joey and John. Both of you, great performances, like I said. The winner actually was decided by 1 point. So this was a very, very close race. But I'm going to have to say goodbye to Mr. Joey. Another great performance, but not good enough to get the W this time.
Oh, good.
Mr. John Meyer, you get the W. Your first episode on, you get the W on your first appearance. My brother, FaceTime is yours. You deserve it, by all means.
Well, I don't have anything put together, but Bill mentioned the LDT, the Canadian doctor, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, should absolutely be NFL Man of the Year. He did get traded at the trade deadline in a very under-the-radar move to the New York Jets, so he's a little closer to his home in Montreal. I just want to give a shout-out to a guy who gave up an NFL season to go home to Canada and to join a long-term care facility to fight COVID-19. The biggest story of the day in the NFL scene was the line about a vaccination from Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the faces of the NFL and a very under the radar guy, and a guy who probably after this season will go back and start his medical career to the fullest extent does not get any attention. So I'm just giving a shout out to LDT. He's a great human being. Should be able to wear that patch, that Walter Payton Man of the Year patch, at least once going forward. I'm giving a shout out to former Chief and current New York Jet LDT Laurent Duvernay Tardif.
Very commendable. Like I said, what he did last year was incredible. I don't know how many people would have taken a year off of. I mean, a spot in the NFL is so coveted. You know, they always do the breakdown of how many guys play in high school and then how many guys play in college and then how many guys actually get drafted and then how many of those guys actually make it onto an NFL roster and then how many of those guys that make it onto an NFL roster actually last more than like 3 years. For you to give up that position to do something that you are so passionate about, to actually do something to help the betterment of everyone is absolutely commendable. I absolutely agree. He deserves a Walter Payton Man of the Year award at some point. But yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Great
and
stuff.
now run those numbers for guys who played their ball in Canada. Right? I mean, that's like 0.003%.
Yeah. He is absolutely one in a million. So once again, shout out LDT, Laurent Duvernay Tardif. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, shout out to you guys for making the show great. Like I said, every week it's all about you guys. You guys are the ones that make the show special. I just get to sit here and have fun. So thank you all for joining us. John, you are a winner today. Let the people know where they can find you at and what you got going on.
Okay, so you see my Twitter handle down there. That's my big two with sports right now. I have a blog and I do write for Arrowhead Live occasionally here in Kansas City. My blog is chiefscoffeecorner.food.blog. It kind of combines two of my passions, coffee, which is an industry that I just got into, and Chiefs football. So yeah, follow me on Twitter. You can Monty Perez and on the Full Monty Sports Show tweets out a lot of my stuff. So if you're following him, you've probably seen some of my stuff. So love to be on. Glad to get the W today.
Absolutely. Like I said, you deserved it. Thank you for joining us. Like I said, always a pleasure having you on, John.
Thanks a lot.
All righty. Mr. Bill Carroll, go ahead and let the people know what you got going on and where they can follow you at.
So I'm working on an article that has nothing to do with sports for Around the Block Black History, but it's targeting two events that took place this month in November. One of them started on this day, November the 3rd in, somewhat long time ago, 1883. The other one was in 1898, November the 10th. And it was two insurrections. And we like to pretend that insurrections are things that, don't happen. But, we had a duly elected government in Danville, Virginia, and a duly elected government in Wilmington, North Carolina, that were overthrown by insurrectionists, right? White supremacists overthrew two duly elected governments that were mixed in race. They had both black and white elected officials. So that's not a sports thing, but it's a Black History thing that I'll be putting on next couple of days on Around the Block Black History. And then football stuff. I've got a bunch of football videos going to drop on Zenny 62 Media. A couple of them tonight, and then some tomorrow, and then some the day after that, because I backed up. I have a bunch of videos that I've been working on, and I'll finally be dropping those. And then my Scouts Notebook will be showing up on Nuts and Bolts Sports. And I keep trying to talk some of the other Nuts and Boltsians into doing a half-year all-pro team, but I guess no one else is interested. So I guess that won't be happening on Nuts and Bolts Sports. But if I could talk somebody else into it so we could vote so it's not just me, then we'd be also doing that. And then what else? Probably just tweeting out a bunch of stuff about football players like I always do. Also, shout out to Buster Posey, who's calling it a career after a terrific baseball career. A guy I first saw playing second base at Florida State, who later moved over to shortstop and moved over to catcher, obviously, and had a great career as a college catcher and then obviously as a pro catcher. And then a sort of melancholy farewell to Tom Matte. Speaking of emergency quarterbacks, Tom Matte, who was a running back for the Colts, but due to injuries to both Unitas and Morrill, had to play some emergency quarterback, including in Super Bowl III. But farewell to him at the age of 82.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Bill, once again, thank you for being on the show. Like I said, you always bring up someone that I didn't know from the past, which I always enjoy. I feel like every time I have you on, I learn something about the NFL, and that is really something I appreciate. So once again, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Joey, another good performance. Again, love having you on, man. Let the people know what you got going on. Let the people know where they can find you at.
Yeah, man, I love coming on these shows, and that is what I got going on. So you can follow me at the Real Joey Q34 right there. And mostly you're just going to see me taking some hot takes on whatever's happening in college sports and pro sports. I'm mostly a baseball and a college guy, big Wildcats, Arizona Wildcats fan. So a lot of my content is commenting or retweeting something crazy that's happening in my 0-8 season, and it's going to continue to get poor. And then I live in Las Vegas, where the UNLV is 0-8. So now I'm wondering who's going to do it first. So that's what's going on. I'm mostly on my Twitter feed and some other funny stuff if you want to follow me. And then I'm always looking to get on a show. I do some spot radio stuff here in Las Vegas. It's nothing to go crazy about, but I do get live on the air every now and then. And I usually post that stuff on social media and Twitter as well. So if you got 20 minutes or so, you can look through and you can see some of the stuff that I've been involved in.
All righty, that is awesome. Joey, once again, thank you for being on the show. Like I said, it is always a pleasure having you. You guys, again, are the ones that make the show better. So thank you for joining us today. Another great showing by Joey. Appreciate you, man. And with that being said, that has been another episode of No Huddle Necessary. But before we get out of here, Bill Carroll brought up Buster Posey, had a little bit of baseball talk there at the end. And I live here in Atlanta. I am by no means an Atlanta Braves fan, but the curse has been lifted. The Braves won the World Series, and for that, I had to dig in my closet to get this because I haven't worn this since I think I was like 8 years old when I went to my first baseball game here in Atlanta. But this is for you, Atlanta. This is for you. Congrats to the Braves on winning the World Series. Again, true championship performance by you guys. Incredible. But yes, this is my tribute to you guys. Atlanta Falcons, Hawks, maybe you guys can catch up. But like I said, the curse is lifted. We'll see what happens moving forward. But this has been another episode of No Huddle Necessary. Thank you all so much for joining us. And of course, thank you to our guests. Again, you guys are the ones that make the show special. I'm just here moderating and having fun. But with that being said, I bid you adieu, and make sure you check us out next week at Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I'll see you next time. Peace.